truth is that if you don't have boundaries, people are just going to treat you however they think is okay to treat you. Setting boundaries is a crucial skill to maintain healthy relationships and to protect your well-being. It's about establishing clear limits and expectations of how people will treat you and how you will manage your own time, energy, and resources. Boundaries can apply to many contexts. It can vary quite widely, and it really can apply to anything. But the idea is that you sort of have personal rules or limits. It's what you're willing to do and what you're willing not to do, and being able to do that and communicate it in a way that's guilt-free. Boundaries protect your emotional, physical, and mental space. It's actually an act of self-care and self-respect. Even if we know that boundaries are good for us, they can actually be very hard to implement, and a lot of people do struggle with boundaries. It's definitely something that I have had to develop a lot over the years. Before I get into how to have boundaries, I first want to explore why it is so hard to have boundaries, and also explore the benefits of having boundaries, because if you understand why you might struggle to implement boundaries and then understand why it's important to have boundaries, you'll be much more motivated to enforce boundaries in your life. Boundaries can trigger a fear of conflict and rejection. Many of us have grown up conditioned to be nice or easygoing. When we set boundaries, it can actually feel like we're initiating a bit of confrontation. We don't want to be seen as unreliable or as if we're letting someone down. We even worry when we say no to someone or have a boundary. We worry that that person might not like us. If you are someone that has people-pleasing tendencies, you may struggle with setting boundaries because of a need for approval and validation, which means that your self-worth is tied into a need to be liked by others, prioritize their needs over our needs. If we've spent a very long time doing this, pleasing others, we genuinely might not know what we actually need. We might not know what our boundaries are, even go as far as thinking that we're not worthy of having boundaries, don't believe that our needs are important or valued. There's also this perception that setting boundaries comes across as quite selfish or aggressive, but that's not true. You can definitely communicate your boundaries in a kind, assertive way. There are so many benefits to having boundaries. When we don't have boundaries, we're more vulnerable to burnout, anxiety, and stress. We can get overwhelmed by other people's demands, problems, and expectations, which can create a lot of pressure when we give and give and give and don't hold on to a little bit for ourselves. We lose energy very, very quickly, and we can become angry and even resentful for it. Truth is that if you don't have boundaries, people are just going to treat you however they think is okay to treat you. When you prioritize your needs and uphold your boundaries, you are showing yourself and others that you are worthy of respect. It builds confidence and creates a stronger sense of self-worth. You get to decide how you spend your time, energy, and resources, what you will and will not tolerate. Boundaries communicates your expectations and limits, allowing others to understand how to interact with you respectfully. When you constantly say yes and secretly you want to say no, that's going to build resentment. When boundaries exist, you know your limits and you know when to say no, which is very, very liberating. Resentment, bitterness, and anger are such dark, heavy feelings, and when you have boundaries, you're less vulnerable to experiencing those feelings. Boundaries actually improves communication because it encourages you to express your feelings, thoughts, and expectations, leading to more honest and open communication. Boundaries actually strengthen bonds with others. When boundaries are set in relationships, there's the sense that you're kind of on the same page about things, which makes you feel safe, respected, and more authentic. One of the best things about having boundaries is that it actually filters or removes people from your life that don't treat you with respect and don't care for your well-being. Boundaries help identify and distance yourself from potentially toxic or draining relationships. There is a lot of benefits to having boundaries, but how do you actually start implementing them? Again, boundaries are invisible lines that you draw to define what is acceptable and unacceptable. They dictate how much you are willing to give, receive, and tolerate. Setting boundaries does require a bit of self-reflection to identify what your limits are and what your needs are. You need to pay attention to situations or interactions that leave you feeling resentful, anxious, disrespected, or drained, because these are indicators that a boundary has either been crossed or that there is a need to establish one. Once you recognize a discomfort in a situation or interaction, you need to be asking yourself, well, what do I value? What's important to me? What do I need to do to feel content and happy? This may involve reflecting on sort of past situations or interactions where you felt there wasn't a boundary or you felt like someone crossed a boundary, and reflecting on what could have been done differently. Once you do know what your boundary is, we do need to implement it. When it comes to boundaries with others, we do need to be communicating it very clearly and respectfully as well. Be very direct and specific, and don't offer any explanation as to why unless you are questioned why. Don't hint, just be very obvious about what your boundary is. Always use I statements. This is actually something that my mum taught me to do. You should always frame your boundaries from your own feelings and needs rather than blaming or accusing others, because that can lead to sort of more conflict and potentially even an argument. So for example, instead of saying, I hate how you always make it all about you, you could say instead that I would really like the opportunity to talk about something on my mind, and I would really appreciate if you listened to me. Really important to try and stay calm and polite and have a sort of even tone of voice. It's quite important to think about the timing when you set boundaries. So you want to be communicating boundaries when it feels safe to do so. You definitely don't want to be setting boundaries if there's tension or if you're in the middle of an argument. If you are, it's probably best to walk away and allow things to calm down. And then once they're calm, that's when you can communicate your boundary. Because if it's in a calm environment, people are more likely to listen and understand. Avoid being sarcastic, aggressive, and even apologetic. Do not apologize for having a boundary. If you are someone that struggles with setting boundaries, start small by just learning to say no. So anytime that you're sort of confronted with a situation that you don't want to do or it's draining, try to challenge yourself by saying no. Don't let any guilt or pressure sway you, and do try to stay very firm, because one of the biggest challenges of boundary setting is being consistent. Boundaries are only effective if you consistently enforce it. If you allow someone to cross your boundary, they will learn that it is not a true limit and they will cross it. When someone crosses your boundary, remind them of your boundary, and if they keep crossing it, you need to have consequences. What that consequence might look like would very much vary from situation to situation, but consequences sort of can have a little bit of a negative connotation, but we do sort of need them to highlight that we are very serious about our boundary and that we're not willing to have it crossed. Boundaries are crucial for attracting and maintaining healthy relationships, and it protects your well-being. It ensures that you are mentally, physically, and emotionally protected. Boundaries can be hard to initiate, and it does require a bit of self-reflection to identify what your needs are and what you value. And you do need to practice setting boundaries, even if it is uncomfortable. The biggest struggle with boundary setting is this idea that someone might not like you if you have a boundary. And yes, that very much might be possible, but at the end of the day, it's your life and your needs are very, very important. Obviously, communicating them in a respectful way is very important, but if someone doesn't respect that or value that, then they're not really worth being in your life. If you're someone that feels angry and resentful for how certain people treat you, you do sort of need to take some responsibility for that and ask yourself, did I have a boundary there? It is a process. Start very small. Start with people maybe that you feel safe around. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know in the comments if you've set a boundary recently and how it made you feel. I know that it's very challenging, but it's also very, very empowering when we do set a boundary, because when we don't have boundaries, it can make us feel very, very powerless. But when we put our foot down and say, no, this is how I want to be treated, we do really take our power back. Give yourself lots of love, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye.